Hello, I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes about suffering. We all know what suffering is like, don't we? It's pretty universal. In fact, the scriptures say that Jesus, as the Son of God, had to suffer for him to learn obedience. What does that mean? It means that Jesus, as a mortal, in order for him to experience who he really was, had to really suffer being in the existence of mortality so that he could connect with that which was immortal, his divinity, or his sonship, or your daughtership. And it's the same way with us. If Jesus had to suffer to awaken to that, then we're going to have to go through the same stuff, the same experience in life. We will not be exempt from it. He suffered why? So that he could learn obedience. That word obedience simply means that he could listen and hear the presence, the voice within, all around him saying, "You're not this body, you are free, I'm exactly how I made you." And if that power came into his life, then he was free. He experienced peace like you and I can as well. But it's so easy to get locked in our bodies and think that's who we really are. We define ourselves by our names, by our races, by our genders, by our nationalities, by our political parties. But those are just all transitory. They come and they go. That's not who we are. I was out walking my dog the other day and a neighbor came running up jogging. And he stopped and talked with me. And I says, "Oh, you're still jogging?" He says, "Yes, I'm 55. I still jog." And he says, "I'm never going to get old." I says, "You're never going to get old? Man, you're going to get old. This body's going to go back to dust." I didn't tell him all that, but I thought later, we all live in that kind of denial. No, not me. I'll somehow get out of this alive. No. Dust thou art, to dust thou shalt return. But spirit lives forever. That's who we are. But we think, well, if I get knowledge, I could really be more secure. If I read and learn how to eat better, exercise better, or to make more money and get more comfortable, then that knowledge will give me power and will give me lack of suffering. Well, it may a little bit, but it won't get you out of suffering at all. Knowledge just comes and goes. 100 years ago, there were people that advocated giving up the patent office because they didn't think anything was left to be invented. Well, there's lots invented since. Knowledge goes on and on. But the kind of knowledge, the peace that comes from awareness, never changes. The world and all that's in it passes away, but that Christ within us abides forever through heat and cold, through all kinds of adversity. It remains the same. And that's who we are in that spirit. You think, well, if I get a degree, would that make me more secure? Oh, you can get a BS degree, you can get an MS degree, you can get a PH degree, but it's all the same illusion, unless you're very careful. My friend used to say, "Boy, I got a BS degree and that's all it was. I got an MS degree and it was more of the same. And I got a PH degree and it was the same stuff piled higher and deeper." Well, we can laugh, but there's an element of truth in that. We also say, well, if I get a higher position in life and people treat me as special, that will make me more secure and less apt to suffer. Like if I become a minister, an ordained minister, they never have to suffer much. Whoa, do they have to suffer? They had so many illusions as they got out of seminary and were ordained as the teacher of God. Well, people don't necessarily accept that. They want to see how you walk and talk it. Lots of suffering. You can become president of the country and you have lots of suffering. You can become a CEO. You can become the most recognized Nobel Peace Prize winner of the world and still go through lots and lots of suffering. Like James and John, who came to Jesus in that story and they said, which one of us could sit on the right hand of you when you get into your kingdom? And Jesus said, "Oh, that's not for me to decide. Just go and serve and listen and grow." And so it is. So the whole purpose of our suffering is to awaken, to see that we're not alone. We often live like, the fish in the sea that say, "Oh, I'm so thirsty, where could I find water?" But it's all around us. We live in this spirit of ocean. We just listen and we breathe it in. That's what obedience means. That's what practicing it. You know, in the Buddhist tradition, they practice it constantly, all during the day. They take retreats to learn this detachment. In our tradition, we've had the Benedictine offices where people stop 6, 7 times a day to remind themselves who they are, to come back to their center. Our mentor John Calvin in the Reformed tradition said 7 times a day we should stop and pray, remember who we are, when we get up, when we eat, mid-morning, mid-afternoon, at night, and when we wake up, before we go back to sleep, we say our prayers to remember again our true allegiance, who we really are. There was a man once that died and went to heaven. He worked so hard, and he thought for sure he would make it. And when he got there, Peter stopped him and said, well, you can't get in right away. This is a point system, so you have to have 100 points to get in. The man said, well, I was a minister, and I did a pretty good job. Served faithfully and did a lot of good for people, and I got a lot of praise. And what's that worth? And Peter said, well, that's worth 4 points. 4 points, the minister said. Well, Peter says, well, what else did you do? Well, he said, I was married. I was faithful to one wife for 50 years. And never cheated on her and took care of her and my whole family. Oh, Peter says, that's good for 3 points. 3 points, the man said. Peter said, well, what else? Well, he said, I was a member of civic organizations, and I did a lot of good in the community. I even took a mission trip around the world once. Peter says, well, that's 1 point. The man says, well, I'll never get into heaven except by the grace of God. And Peter said, well, come on in then. It's not by works of righteousness that we do. They can only add to the pain and the frustration and the illusions that we have to overcome. It's simply by knowing who we are as God's sons and daughters, that we are spirit. So I say often during the day, I'm not my body, I am free, I'm exactly as God created me. And so are you. And so we all can be, and thus be at peace. God bless you in your suffering. Learn obedience, learn detachment, and learn freedom. Namaste.